Chapter 205. Currently, there were 3 forces in High Heaven Pavilion. One was the Dong family, the second was the Bai family, and the third was the Purple Fern Valley. None of them were easy to provoke. These forces were second only to the central capital's 8 great families. These forces may be able to intimidate others, but they definitely couldn't intimidate Yang Kai. These days, Yang Kai had also inquired a lot of information from Xianxia, so he naturally had a plan in mind. Walking through High Heaven Pavilion, Yang Kai first went to the contribution hall to greet Meng Wuya. When he saw Yang Kai, Meng Wuya's old face suddenly became sullen, as if Yang Kai owed him a few million silvers. Old man Meng finally understood why his precious disciple had swept away his previous gloomy and unhappy mood, appearing and disappearing like a ghost every day. It turned out, this little brat had already returned. Needless to say, his precious disciple must have met with him long ago, otherwise how could he have changed so much? If it was a blessing, then it was a disaster. If it was a disaster, then it couldn't be avoided. He just didn't know if his precious disciple would be able to safely survive this disaster. Treasurer Meng, I'm back. Yang Kai greeted with a smile. Meng Wuya laughed dryly, it's good that you're back, it's good that you're back. His face was perfunctory and casual, without the slightest trace of joy. While speaking, Meng Wuya's expression suddenly changed. His divine sense swept over Yang Kai and he was shocked. You've already broken through to the reunion separation stage? Yang Kai nodded slightly. Meng Wuya almost bit his tongue. How long had it been? Calculating the time, it had only been half a year since he left High Heaven Pavilion. Half a year ago. He had only just broken through to the Qi transformation stage, but now he had already broken through to the reunion separation stage. This speed of improvement was too fast, simply unimaginable. How did you do it? Meng Wuya stared at Yang Kai as if he had discovered a treasure. It's just a matter of practice, Yang Kai grinned. Meng Wuya was silent for a long time, thinking that if this little brat continued to break through at this speed, perhaps he really would be able to leave this small world and be worthy of his precious disciple. Meng Wuya's brow wrinkled. Meng Wuya continued, you came back at a bad time. Many people are looking for you now. Why are you looking for me? Yang Kai raised his eyebrows. I'm looking for that skill, Meng Wuya replied in a deep voice. It's the skill you use to severely injure the rank 6 monster beast in the Heaven's Cave inheritance. Many people are interested in this. Yang Kai chuckled. If they want it, I'll sell it to them at a price that will tempt me. The power was enormous, but it was a one-time deal. Gathering Yuan Qi was very taxing, and after using it, if one's physical body was not strong enough, they would only be at a disadvantage. If those people really offered a price that could move Yang Kai's heart, everyone could sit down and discuss. In any case, you have to be careful. Kid, don't say that this old man didn't warn you. That Bai Clan and Purple Fern Valley's people don't really care about you. Su Yen attracted most of their attention, but I think that Dong Clan's kid cares a lot about you. He came to this old man several times to inquire about you. I also care a lot about him. Yang Kai smiled. Where is he now? He's living where you used to live. This little brat is also strange. The Bai family and the Purple Fern Valley's people have all been arranged to live in comfortable places, but he has set his sights on your shabby little house. He is determined to obtain you. You should avoid the limelight for now. Old man Meng rolled his eyes and urged, why don't you go out and hide for a year and a half? When you come back after a year and a half, my precious disciple might have forgotten about you. Meng Wuya thought. Yang Kai slowly shook his head. If they didn't come to find him, he would go find them. What was the point of hiding? After bidding farewell to Meng Wuya, Yang Kai walked towards his old house. Yang Kai. It's Yang Kai. He actually came back at this time. When someone saw Yang Kai, they couldn't help but exclaim. The people from the 3 great forces are looking for him. Isn't he just walking right into their trap? Do you guys think that he will also be recruited by those 3 families? He'll definitely be recruited. How many people have been recruited these days? Yang Kai has suffered a lot in the sect these past few years, and he's only a trial disciple. Now that he has found a good place to go, why would he stay in the sect? The conditions offered by those three forces are very attractive. Another ungrateful wretch. A voice of disdain rang out. It was mixed with endless disdain, and there was even some jealousy. Yang Kai's expression was indifferent, but he didn't respond. Although he had the status of a trial disciple in High Heaven Pavilion, all of his skills and strength were obtained through his own hard work. He had never received the slightest support from the sect. Even if he left the sect, he wouldn't feel any psychological burden, so why would he care about what they said? Not long after, Yang Kai arrived in front of the small wooden hut. Outside the wooden house, there were two old men, one standing with his hands down, the other with his back hunched over, his hands tucked into his sleeves. Yang Kai strolled in, but the two old men didn't even spare him a glance, just standing outside with their eyes closed, lazily basking in the sun. When Yang Kai was 300 meters away from the wooden hut, the two divine senses suddenly rushed towards Yang Kai, not with killing intent, but with a warning. Yang Kai's body shook slightly as the two divine senses rushed into his body, but like stones sinking into the sea, they didn't cause the slightest ripple. With the help of the soul-warming lotus, a trivial warning couldn't do anything to Yang Kai. Continuing to walk forward, his pace was steady and firm. The two sleepy old men suddenly opened their eyes flashing like lightning as they stared at Yang Kai in surprise. Obviously, they hadn't expected this young man to be so strange. Just as they were about to attack again, a light shout suddenly came from inside the wooden hut, "Stop!" As soon as these words came out, the two old men withdrew their auras and once again became harmless, but their two pairs of vigilant eyes never left Yang Kai's side. A man in a cyan robe walked out of the wooden house. He was about 20 years old, with sword-like eyebrows and a handsome face. He had a dignified appearance, and his temperament was quite extraordinary. At first glance, one could tell that he was the son of a big family. However, his body was a little chubby, giving him a charmingly naive appearance. His face was fair and clean, much fairer than the average woman. At this moment, the man was looking at Yang Kai, the two men's eyes meeting in midair, the former with a trace of contempt in his eyes and the latter with a trace of caution. A moment later, the man stepped forward and walked towards Yang Kai, his pace becoming faster and faster. "Young master!" One of the two old men saw this scene and couldn't help calling out softly. "Don't interfere." The man coldly snorted. "Yes." Yang Kai also walked towards him. A moment later, the two men collided, almost at the same time, their fists and palms intersecting, both of their figures swayed. Both of them staggered backwards. "Huh!" The blue-robed man's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise, but he sneered and attacked again. Peng, peng, peng. The man and Yang Kai both seemed to be holding back their anger, desperately attacking each other, not defending at all. Yang Kai kicked towards the man's crotch, but was blocked by the man's legs. The man stretched out two fingers and poked towards Yang Kai's eyes. Yang Kai tilted his head and hurriedly dodged. The two people's moves were strange and unfathomable. They were varied, vicious, and despicable. They were unscrupulous, and it caused the eyelids of the two old men to twitch. However, what made the two men feel strange was that neither this High Heaven Pavilion disciple nor their young master used Yuan Qi in their moves. The two of them were just fighting with their fists and feet. It looked like there was a grudge between them. The fight was in full swing, and it was difficult to distinguish between them. The scene was a hot and humid mess. What was the young master doing? How was this a fight? This was clearly a fight between hooligans. The faces of the two old men who had lived for a long time were flushed red. If news of this scene were to spread, they would definitely be punished. How would their young master live in the future? With a muffled sound, Yang Kai was hit by his opponent's eye-sealing punch. For a moment, he saw stars and his body swayed. With another bang, the Dong family's young master was punched in the face by Yang Kai. He felt like his front teeth were almost knocked out, and his mouth was full of the taste of blood. "Little brat, you court death!" The Dong family's young master angrily shouted. Yang Kai sneered, "Let's see who dies first." The two men once again fought desperately. In the midst of the chaos, the Dong family's young master threw Yang Kai to the ground, his knees pressed against his abdomen, and his hands holding his arms, coldly asking, "Smelly brat, do you admit defeat?" Yang Kai clenched his teeth, disregarding the broken bones in his arms, and suddenly flipped over, grabbing his opponent and ruthlessly twisting his arms, grinning. "Do you admit defeat?" The Dong family's young master hissed in pain. One hand slapping the ground, he looked up at the two old men and said, "What are you still looking at? This young master has been beaten." With a mouth full of dirt, the Dong family's young master no longer had his previous elegant demeanor. The two old men who had been watching the show woke up from their daze and quickly stepped forward. Yang Kai curled his lips, his figure flashing and retreating more than a dozen meters. The two old men didn't chase after him. Although their young lord had been beaten, after watching for so long, they could see that this high heaven pavilion disciple in front of them was an old acquaintance of their young lord. Naturally, he wouldn't kill him. However, how could their young master know someone from such a small place? The Dong family's young master hurriedly got up, looking at Yang Kai with dread, one hand hanging by his side. He gnashed his teeth and said, "Smelly brat, you've grown up." Yang Kai was also in the same situation. His left hand was dislocated, so he couldn't exert any strength. Hearing the Dong family's young master, he chuckled and said, 30 years of river flows east, 30 years of river flows west. If you don't call for help, I'll beat you until your mother can't recognize you." The Dong family's young master took a deep breath and bitterly said, "I'll deal with you later." He called one of the old men and said, "Go help him connect his arm." "No need." Yang Kai stretched out his right hand, holding his left hand, and with a click, his arm was as good as new. The Dong family's young master was dumbfounded, but he steeled his heart and did as he was told. His forehead was covered in cold sweat from the pain, but in the end, his arm was connected. Wind and cloud dual guards? Yang Kai's eyes swept over the two old men and asked casually. The two old men's expressions changed as they stared at Yang Kai in shock. They hadn't expected their identity to be exposed by this young man. Who the hell was he? The Dong family's young master smiled bitterly. "Don't be shocked, this little brat's surname is Yang." Surnamed Yang. The wind and cloud dual guards' expressions changed again as they guessed Yang Kai's identity, quickly cupping their fists. "Greetings, young Master Yang." Chapter 206. Surname Yang. A very common surname. From high officials to cultivator families, to common people and street beggars, there were countless people surnamed Yang. However, in this world, there was only one family surnamed Yang that Dong Qinghan would specifically mention. That was the Yang family of the central capital's 8 great families. The Yang family, which could not be understood by common sense, was also the number 1 family of the 8 great families. The Dong family was also a first-class force in this world, but there was still a gap between them and the central capital's 8 great families, let alone the strongest one. If it was said that a young lord from a great family would come to this place where birds don't shit and chickens don't lay eggs to live as an ordinary disciple, the wind and cloud dual guards would not believe it. Which of these young lords were not delicate-skinned and delicate, enjoying great wealth and glory? From birth, they had always lived a smooth life, getting whatever they wanted. But if it was said that this boy was a member of the Yang family, the wind and cloud dual guards would believe it without a doubt. Because the Yang family's way of training its disciples was very strange, every generation of direct descendants would grow up in this way. At some suitable time, all direct descendants would be dismissed and sent off to find their own opportunities to cultivate, only to be summoned back when the time was right. This kind of training was very dangerous, because when these direct descendants cultivated outside, they could not borrow the power and resources of the family, and once they had any kind of conflict with others, they could be killed. In fact, this kind of thing had happened many times. Many of the Yang family's direct descendants who had been dismissed would die young. There were drawbacks, but there were also benefits. This kind of training method allowed every Yang family direct descendant to become stronger and stronger. It washed away their dependence on the family. After so many years of hard work outside, they learned that the only person they could trust in this world was themselves. Therefore, the direct descendants of the Yang family rarely had the boastful attitude of those young lords. All of them were cold and ruthless like knives, their methods tyrannical. Moreover, the Yang family took advantage of this training method to collect countless secret arts and martial skills from other sects, filling their family's storage. If one were to ask which family in this world had the most secret arts and martial skills, it would undoubtedly be the Yang family. In this world, there was a kind of bird. It was called the cuckoo. The cuckoo would lay its eggs in the nests of other birds, allowing them to hatch and raise them. These little birds were also very cruel. Not only were they gluttonous, but they would also push the chicks born of their adoptive parents out of their nests and fall to their deaths, enjoying the favor of their adoptive parents alone. The cuckoo's reputation was not good, just like the Yang family's reputation outside, because the methods of the two were not very different. Every time the Yang family's direct descendants were about to be dismissed, the world's great sects and great forces would avoid the Yang family as if they were a tiger. He was afraid that if he accidentally took in a Yang family disciple, after raising him, he would just flap his wings and fly away. The Yang family's method of raising their own children by borrowing the nest of a nest had provoked many forces. However, as the head of the 8 great families, the Yang family had thick legs and long arms, so even if those forces complained, they didn't dare to cause trouble for the Yang family. It was said that 100 years ago, a Yang family disciple entered a first-class sect called Converging Heaven sect. This Yang family disciple's talent was outstanding, a rare genius that only appears once every 100 years. The sect master and elders of the Converging Heaven sect were also very fond of him, so naturally, they spent a lot of effort in nurturing him. They even discussed and listed him as their successor, and all kinds of secrets that were not passed on to him were opened up to him without reservation. This kid was indeed a genius. In just a few years, he had learned all kinds of martial skills and secret arts of the Converging Heaven sect, familiarizing himself with them, greatly gratifying his masters. However, 10 years later, this had consumed countless resources of the Converging Heaven sect. The disciple that the sect master and elders had placed such high hopes on actually left the sect one night. Until that time. Only then did the Converging Heaven sect realize that this disciple was actually a Yang family disciple. The Converging Heaven sect master and elders all vomited blood. They almost fell seriously ill. Wasting 10 years of their time to teach this ingrate was one thing, but many of the Converging Heaven sect's secrets had actually been learned by him. Becoming the Yang family's property, how could they not be depressed? The Converging Heaven sect disciples had come to the Yang family to cause trouble, but they had only received some compensation. It was because of this tragedy that the world's great sects were extremely wary of the Yang family disciples. Learning from the past was the teacher for the future. If they spent more than 10 years to cultivate a Yang family disciple and he ran away, wouldn't they repeat the same mistake as the Converging Heaven sect and become the laughingstock of the world? But no matter how much they guarded against him, Yang Kai's direct disciples still had to go out and experience the world. Before they were dismissed, these direct disciples were hidden away, very few people knew their names, and very few people had ever seen them. So, it was impossible to guard against the Yang family disciples. The wind and cloud dual guard's thoughts raced, becoming more and more certain of Yang Kai's identity, because almost 4 years ago, the Yang family really did dismiss the current generation of direct disciples. So, this boy in front of them was the youngest young lord of the Yang family? Didn't they say that he was not suitable for cultivation? How could he have reached the separation and reunion boundary? Although his strength was not high, it was not too bad either. However, for their young lord to recognize him, the wind and cloud dual guards were not surprised, because the Dong family and the Yang family had a marriage alliance in the previous generation. Their young lord's aunt had married the Yang family's 4th master Yang, and their young lord had visited the Yang family several times when he was young, so the two must have met before. Come in and we'll talk. Dong Qinghan's eyes showed a trace of disappointment, but also a trace of surprise and joy, turning to Yang Kai and asking. Yang Kai nodded slightly. The two of them walked into the wooden house. It was still as simple as before, but there was an additional table. On the table, there was wine and food. Sit. Dong Qinghan said concisely. Were you waiting for me? Kai Yang sat down and looked at the table full of food and wine with some surprise. Dong Qinghan's eyes flashed a thick light as he nodded slightly. After a few years outside, it seems that you've grown a lot. The Yang family's way of training their disciples is really something. People always grow. Yang Kai picked up the wine jug and poured Dong Qinghan a cup before refilling his own. Before, when you saw me you were like a mouse seeing a cat. How come you're not afraid now? You even dared to hit me. Dong Qinghan still tasted blood in his mouth. Yang Kai's punch had been really heavy. So what if I hit you? How many times did you bully me when I was a child? Now it's time to get some payback. Yang Kai sneered. This cousin in front of him was quite dissatisfied with his Yang family. Every time he came to the Yang family as a guest, he would teach him a lesson. Yang Kai had never practiced martial arts at that time, and this cousin was a few years older than him. How could he possibly be his opponent? Every time, he would be beaten black and blue. Thinking about all this, Yang Kai couldn't help grinding his teeth, feeling that he had been too lenient just now. When I was little, Dong Qinghan's face was calm, without any emotion, drinking the wine in one gulp and pushing the glass in front of Yang Kai, motioning for him to refill it. Cousin pouring wine for cousin. Naturally there was nothing to say. The two drank several cups in quick succession. Glancing at each other, both of them let out a long sigh. Although their relationship wasn't very good when they were children, Yang Kai knew that this cousin of his was just resentful because at that time he didn't want to practice martial arts. He wanted to use his fists to force him. Generally speaking, Dong Qinghan had left a lot of childhood shadows for Yang Kai, but it was also out of good intentions, but his methods were a bit extreme. I didn't expect you to come to this kind of place. Dong Qinghan chuckled. When I came here and heard your name, I really couldn't believe it. After a few inquiries, I was able to determine that it was you. My father told me to come here. Oh? Did uncle also come here for life experience? Dong Qinghan was a little surprised. I don't know, he didn't say. He only told me to come to this place. Yang Kai had also been puzzled these days, unable to understand the deeper meaning of this. How are my father and mother? After a moment of silence, Yang Kai looked up and asked. Dong Qinghan glanced at him. Auntie misses you very much, she's lost a lot of weight. Yang Kai's expression became gloomy. When he left the Yang family, he was just an ordinary person. After not returning for a few years, his father and mother must be very worried. Auntie was also locked up by your Yang family for half a year, and uncle was beaten 30 times. Pa. The wine glass in Yang Kai's hand shattered. Yang Kai's expression became extremely gloomy, his brow furrowed. What happened? Dong Qinghan sneered. Because auntie missed you so much, she secretly ran out to see how you were doing. Then she was discovered by those old bastards of your Yang family. You also know the Yang family's rules. Direct descendants are allowed to go out for life experience. No one is allowed to visit them in any way. Violators will be severely punished. If uncle hadn't taken her place, the one who would have been beaten 30 times would have been my auntie. 30 beatings. This was not an ordinary 30 beatings. The Yang family's punishment hall had a special artifact that was powered by Yuan Qi, specifically used to beat people with the beatings. Even if a master at the Yuan Qi realm received a few beatings, they would be bedridden for several days. These 30 beatings, 4th Master Yang would probably be bedridden for several months. Yang Kai took a deep breath, calmed his tumbling blood, grabbed the wine glass in front of Dong Qinghan, and drank it in one gulp. Those old bastards, sooner or later they will pay the price. Yang Kai said coldly. In the past, he was not suitable for cultivation, nor did he want to cultivate. As an ordinary person, he was still driven out of the Yang family by those old bastards, forcing him to go out for life experience with his brothers. A 12-year-old boy, still an ordinary person, had traveled thousands of miles to come to High Heaven Pavilion. The hardships he had suffered, how could he tell outsiders? I don't like your Yang family, I also don't like your Yang family. Your Yang family is too cold and ruthless. Dong Qinghan spat disdainfully. The Yang family's way of training their disciples was very special, although it could temper a person, because it was done this way, the Yang family's affection for each other was very thin. In order to maintain the Yang family's prestige, they would sacrifice anyone who could be sacrificed. Yang family disciples who go out for life experience need at least 10 years before they can return. Now it's been less than 4 years, Auntie still has to wait 6 years before she can see you again. I don't know if she can afford to wait. Dong Qinghan's tone was full of sadness. When you go back this time, tell father and mother that I'm fine, so they can rest assured. I will. Dong Qinghan nodded slightly. That's my auntie. The heavy topic gradually passed. The two of them no longer wanted to talk about it. You came to High Heaven Pavilion this time because of the Heaven's Cave inheritance? Yang Kai asked. Of course, why else would I come to this place where even birds don't lay eggs? Dong Qinghan curled his lips, suddenly changing the topic, but your sect really does have a few geniuses, especially that girl named Su Yan. It is said that not only is her strength profound, she is also a stunning beauty, as beautiful as ice. Unfortunately, I have never had the chance to see her face. Chapter 207. As Dong Qinghan spoke, he stared at Yang Kai meaningfully, as if he was observing his reaction. Obviously, he had heard some kind of rumor. That's your sister-in-law. Yang Kai didn't beat around the bush and directly stated. Dong Qinghan couldn't help but open his mouth wide as he stared at Yang Kai stupidly. Obviously, he hadn't thought that the rumors were actually true, that his little cousin had managed to win over a sect's proud daughter. The Yang family was really a pack of wolves, tigers and leopards. None of them could be underestimated. Fortunately, I didn't join forces with those two idiots from the Bai family and Purple Fern Valley, otherwise wouldn't I have been trying to steal her away? Dong Qinghan smiled bitterly. Speaking of which, as the young lord of the Dong family, his status was high, and he was also quite handsome. At such a young age, it was natural for him to be unrestrained and unrestrained. Wherever he went, he would leave his mark, attracting bees and butterflies. Who knew how many beautiful women he had shared a life of fish with? However, because he had heard a few words between Yang Kai and Su Yan when he was inquiring about him, Dong Qinghan had decided to be cautious and not collude with the Bai family and Purple Fern Valley. Just now, he had only spoken out to confirm his suspicions, but he hadn't expected the rumors to be true. Dong Qinghan also felt a burst of relief. Fortunately, he hadn't tried to provoke Yang Kai, otherwise wouldn't his cousin have tried to kill him? Yang Kai naturally knew the temperament and personality of this kind of young lord, so he bluntly admitted it. This wasn't to show off, but to show off. Obviously, he was telling him, she's my woman. Whoever has ideas about her, I'll fight them. Smelly brat, your luck with women isn't shallow. Dong Qinghan chuckled. Although High Heaven Pavilion was a small sect, he had heard that the girl named Su Yan had reached the 4th or 5th stage of Yuan Qi. Even if one looked at the entire world, such a talent was second to none. What's more, she had most likely obtained a powerful inheritance. Such a talent, even if she went to the central capital's 8 great families, would be fought over and treated as a treasure. Since she's my sister-in-law, it seems my Dong family won't be able to recruit her. Dong Qinghan smiled bitterly. You should have had a good harvest, right? Yang Kai looked up at him and asked casually. Dong Qinghan nodded slightly, a bit. But it was far from what he had expected. You've also entered the Heaven's Cave inheritance. Tell me, what's it like inside? Yang Kai muttered to himself for a while and then briefly explained what had happened in the Heaven's Cave inheritance. However, he did not reveal who had obtained the inheritance. Although it was all very innocuous information, Dong Qinghan still listened with great interest. Sigh, it's surprising that the Heaven's Cave inheritance would appear in a place like this. The disciples of the 3 sects have benefited for nothing. Why didn't it appear in my Dong family's territory? Dong Qinghan sighed, secretly cursing the unfairness of the heavens. 2 or 3 months before the Heaven's Cave inheritance appeared. The 3 sects kept this a secret, and it wasn't until later that the news gradually spread. Only then did the great powers and sects send people to search for the inheritor. Unfortunately, until now, no one had found the inheritor. However, The artifacts and martial skills from the Heaven's Cave inheritance had all been purchased by each of the sections. These artifacts were all seriously damaged and could no longer be used, but they were still artifacts refined by a powerful cultivator countless years ago, so they had considerable research value. Moreover, the grade of these martial skills was not too low, at least Earth grade and even Heaven grade. It could be said that the Heaven's Cave inheritance had appeared this time. It had allowed High Heaven Pavilion, Blood Battle Gang, and Storm Hall to become rich in a short time. The great forces that had come here all bought from the three sects, and each of them made a lot of money. The only regrettable thing was that some disciples couldn't resist the temptation and left their sects, pledging allegiance to these great forces. There were many in High Heaven Pavilion. The 5 great elders couldn't do anything about it. After all, these great forces were strong, so what if they poached a few disciples? Wei Shitong and Su Xianwu could only turn a blind eye and pray that these great forces' young lords and masters leave as soon as possible, returning peace to High Heaven Pavilion. As the two cousins were talking, the Wind and Cloud dual guards suddenly called out, "Young Lord! Young Master Yang, people from the Bai family and Purple Fern Valley have come." Yang Kai and Dong Qinghan glanced at each other. The latter chuckled, "They've come quickly, I'm afraid they've come for the martial skill in your hand." Yang Kai nodded secretly. Meng Wuya had told him before that the star mark he displayed in the Heaven's Cave inheritance had attracted a lot of attention. A martial skill that could severely injure a 6th-order monster beast in one blow, how bad could it be? The people from the Bai family and Purple Fern Valley had obviously come here for the star mark. "What do you want to do?" Dong Qinghan looked at Yang Kai calmly. These two idiots had been harassing his younger sister-in-law these past few days, so Yang Kai was definitely holding back his anger. Soon there would be a good show to watch. If Yang Kai exposed his true identity, the people from the Bai family and Purple Fern Valley would definitely not dare to provoke him. Most likely they would apologize and then run away. But the problem was that Yang Kai couldn't be exposed. Dong Qinghan was looking forward to seeing how his cousin would solve the current problem, his slightly chubby face filled with a cheerful smile. "That depends on their attitude." Yang Kai said indifferently, "If their attitude is good, everyone sit down and talk." The star mark could shine in his hands, but that didn't mean it could in others' hands, so even if he sold it, it wouldn't be a big deal. What if their attitude isn't good? Dong Qinghan narrowed his eyes. Yang Kai glanced at him and sneered. Dong Qinghan also smiled and couldn't help shaking his head, putting on an expression of watching a good show. Expecting the two idiots from the Bai family and Purple Fern Valley to have a good attitude was obviously impossible. Not long after, 2 loud laughs came from outside and 2 men about the same age as Dong Qinghan walked in, one in white robes and the other in purple robes. Both of them were young elites. The one in white was the Bai family's young lord, Bai Yunfeng, and the one in purple was Purple Fern Valley's disciple, Fan Hong. Behind these two were 2 High Heaven Pavilion disciples, one of whom Yang Kai was familiar with, but he couldn't remember his name. The other was Chao Zhengwen, a disciple of the Law Enforcement Hall. Yang Kai and Chao Zhengwen had met twice before. Before leaving High Heaven Pavilion, this person had delivered a promotion order to Yang Kai from the Elder Council, but had been rejected by Yang Kai, causing him to lose a lot of face. After that, he was punished by the Great Elder, so it could be said that he hated Yang Kai to the bone. These 2 High Heaven Pavilion disciples had both entered the Heaven's Cave inheritance, but now they were following behind by Yunfeng and Fan Hong. Obviously they had been tempted by the benefits and had pledged their allegiance to them. At this moment, they were no longer disciples of High Heaven Pavilion, but disciples of the Bai family and Purple Fern Valley. "Brother Dong is so elegant. You're drinking by yourself here, yet you didn't call me or Brother Fan. You're treating us like outsiders." Bai Yunfeng laughed, glancing over at Yang Kai lightly before putting away the folding fan in his hand, his expression proud. Fan Hong also laughed. "Brother Dong is not tempted by beauty, Brother Bai and I admire him greatly. It's funny that Brother Bai and I have been searching that small loft for more than half a month yet have never seen this beautiful woman. It's better for Brother Dong to drink and enjoy himself here." Yang Kai's mouth curled into a faint sneer. The small loft these two were talking about was definitely Su Yan's residence. Dong Qinghan smiled and gestured for the two to sit down, glancing over at Yang Kai and saying, "The day before yesterday, father and master arranged a marriage for me, so I don't dare to provoke other women. This Dong is not as free as these two brothers." Bai Yunfeng and Fan Hong both sat down while Chao Jingwen and the other High Heaven Pavilion disciples stood behind them. Bai Yunfeng said, "Brother Dong must be joking. I heard that Brother Dong recently recruited a female disciple from High Heaven Pavilion. I don't know what Brother Dong plans to do with this female disciple. Do you want to keep her in a golden house or take her as a concubine?" Dong Qinghan smiled wryly and shook his head. "Brother Bai must be joking. I did indeed recruit a female disciple, but it was for the sake of the family. That girl also entered the Heaven's Cave inheritance and obtained a good opportunity. Her aptitude is not bad. As long as she is given the right resources, she will definitely develop in the future." Bai Yunfeng laughed and didn't ask any more questions, instead turning to look at Yang Kai, a trace of contempt and arrogance flashing across his eyes as he said lightly, "This must be the High Heaven Pavilion disciple named Yang Kai, right? How is Brother Dong's discussion with him going?" These words were spoken very casually, although in front of Yang Kai, it was clear he didn't put him in his eyes and was instead asking for Dong Qinghan's opinion. "We're currently discussing." Dong Qinghan nodded slightly. "The result hasn't come out yet, but you two have already arrived." Bai Yunfeng and Fan Hong's eyes lit up. "It seems that Brother Fan and I still have a chance." Fan Hong looked directly at Yang Kai and said, "I heard that you obtained a powerful martial skill from the Heaven's Cave inheritance. Is that true?" Yang Kai smiled and said, "N." Fan Hong's spirit shook as he opened his mouth. "Honest people don't beat around the bush. This young lord will be frank. I am interested in the martial skill you obtained. I wonder what kind of conditions you want before you are willing to part with it? What benefits can you offer?" Yang Kai looked at him lightly. Fan Hong chuckled, reaching into his sleeve and taking out a stack of banknotes, pushing them in front of Yang Kai and saying lightly, "Here are 100,000 silvers. If you are willing to write down the cultivation method of that martial skill for me, these banknotes are yours." When Fan Hong said this, his expression was confident, as if he was holding a pearl of wisdom in his hand. Obviously, he believed that 100,000 silvers was extremely attractive to a disciple of such a small sect. In fact, when the 100,000 silvers were placed on the table, whether it was Chao Jingwen or the other High Heaven Pavilion disciple, their breathing became heavy as they stared at the banknotes on the table. Yang Kai slowly shook his head. Fan Hong's expression remained unchanged as he took out another stack of banknotes and pushed them in front of Yang Kai. Yang Kai was still unmoved. Bai Yunfeng laughed. "Brother Fan, you are too stingy." "Yang Kai, this young lord is willing to exchange 200,000 silvers for your martial skill. How about it? You may not be able to earn so much wealth, but it is enough for you to live several lifetimes without having to worry about food and clothing. You can also have 3 wives and 4 concubines, enjoying the glory and splendor of life." Bai Yunfeng was much more generous than Fan Hong, causing the latter to glare at him fiercely, but Bai Yunfeng didn't care and just looked at Yang Kai with a smile. Dong Qinghan was also smiling, but there was a deep meaning behind his smile. Wanting to use 200,000 silvers to smash a Yang family disciple, these two idiots were really creative. Dong Qinghan wanted to laugh a few times, but he had no choice but to endure, his shoulders slightly shaking. Holding back his laughter was extremely difficult. This show is really interesting. Chapter 208. 200,000 silvers is already a lot. Are you still not satisfied? Bai Yunfeng frowned, looking at Yang Kai with some displeasure. They had purchased a lot of martial skills these days, but had never offered such a high price to anyone. If he hadn't heard that this martial skill was extraordinary, how could he be so generous? This little brat doesn't know how to appreciate kindness. Bai Yunfeng coldly snorted. He was the Bai family's young lord. Even if that martial skill was really worth 200,000 silvers, he still had to sell it to him for 100,000 silvers. Dong Qinghan saw that this person was a little angry, so he couldn't sit still, pretending to be unfamiliar with Yang Kai, fanning the flames. "Little brat, this Dong will also raise the price. 200,000 silvers plus a bottle of the Dong family's special profound spirit pills, how about it? Bai Yunfeng and Fan Hong both looked at Dong Qinghan with some surprise. They hadn't expected him to be willing to take out profound spirit pills. This was an Earth-grade mid-rank spirit pill. Although its grade wasn't too high, its effects were definitely pleasing. Taking one of these pills could help one achieve twice the result with half the effort. Was this martial skill really so valuable? Yes, Dong Qinghan and this Xianxia had talked a lot before, so he must have some understanding of this martial skill, so he was willing to part with a bottle of profound spirit pills. 200,000 silvers plus a common grade high-rank artifact. Fan Hong immediately raised his bid. Dong Qinghan frowned. Brother Fan, this is a malicious competition. Fan Hong didn't speak, but Bai Yunfeng took over. Brother Dong, that martial skill's power is extraordinary. Since everyone wants it, naturally it's fair to the highest bidder. This young lord offers 300,000 silvers and a common grade high-rank artifact, a defensive artifact at that. Fan Hong heard this and was stunned. Smiling wryly, he said, Brother Bai, you're really willing. This price, even he didn't dare to offer. He hadn't expected Bai Yunfeng to be so decisive. Dong Qinghan also smiled. Since Brother Bai is so determined, this Dong won't compete with you. If we continue to fight, it will only hurt our friendship. Bai Yunfeng laughed, cupping his hands to the two of them. Modest. When this matter is over, I will definitely arrange a banquet to apologize to the two of you. The three of them were still bidding and talking happily. It seemed that they had already determined the ownership of the star mark and didn't care about Yang Kai's opinion at all. Yang Kai frowned and said indifferently, I didn't say I was going to sell this martial skill, right? Bai Yunfeng's smile immediately froze on his face. Fan Hong was also stunned. 300,000 taels plus a common grade high-rank defensive artifact. Isn't that enough to offset the value of that martial skill? Don't ask for too much, or you may lose both the person and the money. Bai Yunfeng's expression was cold and stern as he threatened in a cold voice. Chao Jingwen, who was standing behind Bai Yunfeng, also sneered, Yang Kai, don't be so shameless. Mr. Bai's price is already fair enough. What else do you want? Bai Yunfeng unfolded his folding fan, crossed his legs, and looked at Yang Kai calmly, gently fanning himself. His face was full of disdain and contempt. Dong Qinghan continued to stir up trouble, deliberately saying, Oh, do you want to join one of our forces? Bai Yunfeng and Fan Hong both frowned. They couldn't help but think of this possibility. Before the two of them could speak, Chao Jingwen coldly said, Mr. Bai, this person has been in High Heaven Pavilion for 3 years, but has only cultivated to the tempered body 3rd stage and is only a trial disciple of High Heaven Pavilion. Such a mediocre person is doomed to have no future. Recruiting him into the Bai family will only cause us to lose face. Mr. Bai should think twice. Before he finished speaking, Yang Kai suddenly flicked his hand, and the glass of wine in front of him flew out and splashed directly onto Chao Jingwen's face. The faces of the people at the table suddenly changed, especially Bai Yunfeng, whose face was extremely ugly. Yang Kai, you court death. Chao Jingwen was furious and was about to attack, but was stopped by Bai Yunfeng. Little brat, before you hit a dog you need to look at its owner. Bai Yunfeng stared coldly at Yang Kai, a dangerous light flashing across his eyes. If you don't give me a satisfactory explanation today, don't even think about leaving here alive. You want an explanation? Yang Kai's face was indifferent, his voice flat. My martial skill is mysterious grade. Is this explanation enough? As soon as this statement came out, everyone's face changed again. Even Dong Qinghan was stunned. Mysterious grade. Everyone had guessed that Yang Kai's martial skill might be heaven grade, but they never thought it would actually be mysterious grade. Even first-class forces like the Dong family, Bai family, and Purple Fern Valley only had a few sets of profound grade martial skills. Any set of profound grade martial skills was a secret of these great forces. Unless one was a future pillar of the family, they absolutely could not practice it. Is this for real? Dong Qinghan's voice was trembling. In his heart he cursed, Fuck, If I knew it was a mysterious grade martial skill, I wouldn't have stayed here and watched the show. If I had exchanged this martial skill with my cousin, then everything would have been fine. Now, even that idiot Bai Yunfeng has joined in. I'm afraid this matter will be difficult to resolve. In the Heaven's Cave Inheritance, my strength was only at the initial element boundary 7th stage, but I was able to severely injure a 6th-order monster beast. I don't need to say more about the grade of this martial skill, right? Yang Kai snorted. Everyone's breathing became hot. Looking at Yang Kai again, all of their previous contempt and disdain had disappeared, all of their eyes shining brightly. The conditions just now remain unchanged. You can join my Bai family as a disciple. Bai Yunfeng took a deep breath and made a decision. Exchanging a disciple's identity for a mysterious grade martial skill, the Bai family would definitely make a big profit. As for how Yang Kai would be treated after joining the Bai family, it would depend on his own aptitude. I can accept you as a disciple on behalf of Purple Fern Valley and provide you with a good cultivation environment. Fan Hong also hurriedly said, I have no interest in joining any of your families. Yang Kai was too lazy to waste any more words with them. If you want my martial skill, fine, but you have to give me a mysterious grade martial skill in exchange. Fan Hong's brow wrinkled, his expression strange. You want our secret martial skill? We are all mysterious grade martial skills, so if we exchange, we won't suffer a loss. What's wrong? Is this exchange not fair? Yang Kai looked at him indifferently. Bai Yunfeng sneered. That's impossible. A secret martial skill is a secret martial skill, except for the Bai family's direct descendants. Outsiders are not allowed to practice it. Then there's nothing to talk about. Yang Kai stood up, intending to leave. Wanna leave? Bai Yunfeng's expression changed, suddenly sneering, reaching out his hand to block Yang Kai's path. If you don't hand over that martial skill today, don't even think about leaving here. Since the deal was not reached, Bai Yunfeng wanted to rob him, a trivial High Heaven Pavilion disciple. He really didn't put him in his eyes. Scram. Yang Kai didn't like him. At this moment, seeing him make a move, how could he hesitate, fiercely punching out? Bai Yunfeng coldly snorted, meeting the attack with his palm. With a loud bang, a fierce yuan qi burst out, and the cabin was suddenly torn apart. Asterisk schwa 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 asterisk. Several figures rushed out from inside. Dong Qinghan, Bai Yunfeng, Fan Hong, Yang Kai, Chao Zhengwen, and the other High Heaven Pavilion disciple were all covered in dust. You dare attack me? Bai Yunfeng was furious, his expression ferocious. In that exchange, although he hadn't suffered a loss, he also hadn't been able to defeat Yang Kai. He was just a little surprised that the other party's yuan qi was so vigorous, obviously only a separation and reunion boundary 1st stage cultivator, yet he had been able to block his blow. Young Master Bai, you have a noble status. You don't need to lower yourself to his level. Let me help you vent your anger. Chao Zhengwen took the initiative to volunteer. Just now he had been splashed with wine by Yang Kai, losing a great deal of face. Naturally he wanted to get back at him. Moreover, he had already pledged his allegiance to the Bai family, so now he naturally wanted to find an opportunity to show off. As long as he could beat Yang Kai to a pulp, Bai Yunfeng's anger would be alleviated, and in the future he would receive many benefits. Bai Yunfeng coldly nodded. Break his hands and feet. Let him know the consequences of being disrespectful to me. A trivial disciple from a small sect dares to act so presumptuous. Young master can rest assured, I've long wanted to teach this junior brother a lesson. Chao Zhengwen sneered, staring at Yang Kai from a distance of several dozen meters. He shouted, Junior brother Yang, don't say this brother didn't give you a chance. As long as you kneel down now, crawl in front of young Master Bai and kowtow a few times, perhaps young Master Bai will spare you, otherwise you'll have to suffer some pain. Yang Kai looked at him sarcastically. You've become someone else's dog. Your tone has become much more arrogant. Chao Zhengwen's face turned red, and his expression became cold. Young Master Bai has treated me with courtesy, so what if I pledge my allegiance to him? Even the elders of the sect haven't said anything. What qualifications do you have to criticize me? You're humiliating yourself, and you still expect others to respect you? Since we're from the same sect, I didn't want to make things difficult for you. But since you're looking for death, don't blame this brother for being ruthless. Qiao Zhengwen took a deep breath, suppressed the anger in his heart, and circulated the yuan qi in his body. He didn't waste any more words, and used his body movement technique to get close to Yang Kai. But just as he took a step forward, before he could even rush out, Yang Kai, who was several dozen meters away, appeared in front of him in the blink of an eye. Qiao Zhengwen's face showed a trace of astonishment, then his expression changed greatly, and he hurriedly made a move. Yang Kai casually blocked, and dissolved his move. The tip of his fist flashed, and the Burning Sun's 3-layer blast was thrown out. Striking his chest, Qiao Zhengwen's face instantly paled as his chest caved in. Taking a step back, Qiao Zhengwen used this opportunity to disperse Kai Yang's fist. He managed to open up a distance between him and Yang Kai, but the fierce yuan qi in his body exploded. 3 muffled sounds rang out, and Qiao Zhengwen spat out a mouthful of blood. He had been defeated in one move. This turn of events stunned everyone on the spot. Although Qiao Zhengwen's strength wasn't very strong, he was still a separation and reunion boundary 5th stage cultivator. But such a person had actually been beaten by Yang Kai to the point of spitting out blood. Although he had borrowed the power of his martial skill, Yang Kai's speed was really frightening. Qiao Zhengwen obviously didn't expect Yang Kai to be so tyrannical. After spitting out a mouthful of blood, before he could recover, Yang Kai actually rushed up again. Panicking and panicking, how could he block? After exchanging a dozen moves, Qiao Zhengwen was once again hit. The crisp sound of bones breaking rang out from his chest, and Qiao Zhengwen's forehead was covered in cold sweat from the pain. Yang Kai's expression was indifferent, and his moves were ruthless. Every punch was aimed at Qiao Zhengwen's vitals, and after a while, Qiao Zhengwen could only block without any strength to fight back. After 10 breaths, Qiao Zhengwen's vision blurred. Yang Kai flew up and kicked, and Qiao Zhengwen was suddenly sent flying like a rag sack, falling to the ground and never getting up again. He didn't die, but who knew how many of his bones were broken? He would have to lie in bed for at least several months to recover. Chapter 209. Shocked, Dong Qinghan stared blankly at Yang Kai, never having imagined that after 4 years, his cousin would become so ferocious. A separation and reunion boundary 5th stage cultivator had only lasted less than 30 breaths of time before collapsing to the ground, while Yang Kai was completely unscathed. Amidst the dust, Yang Kai stood tall and straight, his expression indifferent as he swept his eyes over the audience. Bai Yunfeng and Fan Hong were both slightly shocked. After a moment, Bai Yunfeng glanced over at Qiao Zhengwen, who had collapsed to the ground, and coldly snorted. Sure enough, a disciple cultivated by a small sect is actually so weak. It seems this young lord will have to deal with him personally. Fan Hong glanced at him strangely, but immediately relaxed. Bai Yunfeng was a young lord of the Bai family, so he had a high opinion of himself. Although he didn't care about Qiao Zhengwen's life or death, he was still a disciple he had recruited, so he was considered half a member of the Bai family. Now that Qiao Zhengwen had been crippled in front of him, how could Bai Yunfeng easily let this go? If it were him, Fan Hong would not have let this go either. What's more, Yang Kai had a mysterious grade martial skill. Using this as an excuse to teach him a lesson, he could then interrogate him about the cultivation method of that martial skill. Considering all this, Fan Hong couldn't help but feel a little annoyed, coldly glancing over at the High Heaven Pavilion disciple standing behind him, wondering why Yang Kai hadn't attacked him just now. If he had been crippled, he would have had a reason to act. Brother Bai, isn't it bad to attack someone else's territory? Dong Qinghan was worried that Yang Kai wouldn't be able to cope, so he quickly stood up and said, after all, Bai Yunfeng was a Yuan Qi boundary 1st stage master, and between Yuan Qi and separation and reunion boundary, there was a huge divide. Bai Yunfeng coldly replied, so what if this is someone else's territory? Daring to hurt my Bai family disciple, he must pay the price. He was determined to teach Yang Kai a lesson. Dong Qinghan couldn't help but frown. He wanted to help but didn't know how to. After all, in the eyes of outsiders, he and Yang Kai were only acquaintances. If he acted too obviously, he was afraid others would see through him. Once Yang Kai's identity was exposed, it would do him no good. Although the Yang family was powerful, they had many enemies. God knows how many people in the world hated the Yang family. Just as Dong Qinghan was in a dilemma, he saw Yang Kai secretly give him a meaningful glance, causing Dong Qinghan's brow to twitch slightly, but he didn't say anything. Bai Yunfeng slowly walked towards Yang Kai. As he walked, he ordered, "2 cabinet elders, please stay on the side." Immediately, 2 old men responded in a deep voice. Dong Qinghan had an immortal ascension boundary master protecting him, so how could Bai Yunfeng and Fan Hong not? After all, they were all outstanding talents of their respective forces. Before their wings were fully grown, they naturally needed someone to protect their safety. "I'll give you one last chance. Submit to my Bai family and hand over that martial skill, and I'll spare your life." Bai Yunfeng raised his head slightly and looked at Yang Kai arrogantly. Yang Kai sneered. The Yuan Qi on his body surged, and his fighting spirit was aroused. Needless to say, this attitude already explained everything. "Very good, I'll spare your life. After all, you still have some value." Bai Yunfeng's figure blurred as soon as he finished speaking, like a cloud of dust being blown away by the wind. Yang Kai's expression became cold, not daring to relax in the slightest. Although Bai Yunfeng looked domineering, he was still a young lord of the Bai family, and his strength was higher than his own by a great realm. Facing such a person, any slight carelessness could be fatal. It was very likely he would be knocked down in a single blow. In fact, Yang Kai didn't want to face such an enemy right now. But when he thought about how this man spent all day in front of Su Yan's loft, Yang Kai couldn't help feeling a little bored. Every man would regard their woman as their exclusive property. Although Bai Yunfeng hadn't even seen Su Yan's appearance, it still made Yang Kai extremely uncomfortable. A strange cloud of dust appeared behind Kai Yang, and Bai Yunfeng appeared with a cold smile on his face. Lightly, he sent out a palm strike towards Kai Yang's back, his palm containing an unparalleled amount of strength, but he didn't release it. Dong Qinghan's complexion suddenly changed, and he almost shouted out a warning. Yang Kai quickly turned around, his palm turning red as his true Yang Yuan Qi burst out, meeting Bai Yunfeng's attack head-on. The astral wind howled, the world energy around them became chaotic, and the palm strike wreaked havoc. Yang Kai's body shook as he was sent flying several dozen meters, but Bai Yunfeng remained motionless, his expression calm and indifferent. Although the two of them had fought before, at that time Yang Kai had used 80% of his strength while Bai Yunfeng had hurriedly parried, so they were evenly matched. But now Bai Yunfeng had angrily attacked, so how could he compare to before? With just one blow, Yang Kai had suffered some losses, his body falling to the ground, but he quickly stood up and stared at Bai Yunfeng with a dignified expression. "A separation and reunion first stage boy dares to fight with me? You overestimate yourself." Bai Yunfeng sneered, his figure once again changing positions. Yang Kai didn't know what kind of strange movement skill this was, but it made him unable to see through it. Yang Kai grit his teeth, a cold light flashing across his eyes as he vigilantly scanned his surroundings. "You think you can defend?" Bai Yunfeng's voice suddenly sounded from the void, and immediately his figure appeared 3 meters in front of Yang Kai, still casually sending out a palm strike. Burning Sun's 3-layer burst. Yang Kai no longer held back, directly using his own martial skill. Bai Yunfeng's face flashed a trace of caution. He had already noticed the ferocity of this blow. But as the Bai family's young lord, and a master at the Yuan Qi boundary, how could he retreat? Not only did he not retreat, he instead rushed forward. He wanted to defeat Yang Kai with a tyrannical posture and overwhelming strength, letting him know the huge gap between them. With a bang, Yang Kai was forced back again, his Yuan Qi showing signs of chaos. Bai Yunfeng remained calm and composed, but just as he was about to open his mouth to ridicule, his expression suddenly changed, and he couldn't help snorting as he waved his hand, forcing out a burning hot true Yang Yuan Qi. This was what Yang Kai had injected into his body. 3 transformations. Bai Yunfeng's eyes flashed brilliantly. He had not expected this Yang Kai to have mastered such an extraordinary martial skill. This martial skill was extremely powerful and unpredictable, definitely a heaven-grade martial skill. Just now, Bai Yunfeng had been careless and almost suffered a big loss. If he hadn't reacted quickly enough and forced it out of his body, he would have suffered some minor injuries. Good stuff, after this young lord defeats you, I'll take it all. Bai Yunfeng grinned, his body once again transforming into a cloud of dust. Yang Kai's body tensed up as he carefully perceived the changes in his surroundings. Suddenly, his eyes flashed as he stretched out his hand, his yuan qi raging like a raging flame. His palm pressed against the void and suddenly exploded. Bai Yunfeng hurriedly reappeared, his face filled with surprise and embarrassment as he hurriedly retreated, narrowly avoiding Yang Kai's blow. The other immortal ascension boundary masters who were observing from the sidelines couldn't help calling out in surprise. Although they could spy on Bai Yunfeng's movements, it was only because they had cultivated their divine senses that they were able to easily investigate. But what was this high heaven pavilion disciple relying on? He was only a separation and reunion boundary first-stage cultivator, not possessing a divine sense, yet after only a few exchanges he was able to see through Bai Yunfeng's mysteries? Wasn't this battle intuition a bit too strong? I was wondering what it was. It turns out you're just relying on the power of an artifact. Yang Kai sneered at Bai Yunfeng contemptuously. The mysterious movement skill Bai Yunfeng had displayed over and over again was even faster and more unpredictable than the one he had created himself. Yang Kai didn't understand at first, but now that he suddenly saw the jade pendant on Bai Yunfeng's waist flash, he suddenly understood. That wasn't some kind of movement skill, but rather an artifact used to confuse his eyes. Bai Yunfeng's face reddened. Speaking of which, he was a yuan qi boundary cultivator. Using an artifact to deal with a separation and reunion boundary cultivator was really not appropriate. After being pointed out by Yang Kai, Bai Yunfeng became angry and coldly snorted, "Even if you don't have an artifact, do you think you're my opponent?" Crossing his feet, Bai Yunfeng flew directly in front of Yang Kai, his speed extremely fast. Unyielding will. Dealing with an enemy a great realm higher than himself, Yang Kai didn't hesitate and directly used his own mysterious martial skill. His yuan qi suddenly became violent, filled with an unparalleled evil intent, his whole face ferocious, his eyes filled with a bloodthirsty and cruel light. A surge of power suddenly erupted from his body and a black flame burst out from his body. At this moment, Yang Kai was like a demon descending from the heavens. His whole body burned and the air around him distorted. Yang Kai raised a palm, bringing with it endless flames, and fiercely swept it towards Bai Yunfeng. The enemy suddenly changed. Bai Yunfeng was shocked. Perceiving Yang Kai's sudden increase in strength and the burning yuan qi, he instantly realized the terror of this attack. Shocked, he didn't dare to hesitate and hurriedly operated the yuan qi in his body, bringing out his own killing move. Heaven's Net. Between his 10 fingers, yuan qi condensed like silk threads, and as his fingers danced, they instantly intertwined into a large net in front of him. This net formed purely from yuan qi could cut gold and break jade. Its sharpness was not inferior to that of an ordinary earth-grade weapon. The flames collided with the heaven's net. Bai Yunfeng's yuan qi threads passed through the flames without being damaged and directly enveloped Yang Kai. Yang Kai's mind moved, and even more energy surged out from his body, the temperature of the flames increasing by a lot. At a speed visible to the naked eye, the threads were completely dissolved in a breath of time, and immediately Yang Kai's palm struck Bai Yunfeng's shoulder. Yang Kai and Bai Yunfeng both retreated at the same time, looking at each other with great fear. On Yang Kai's body, small bloody scars slowly appeared, all of which were caused by the heaven's net. Each of the yuan qi threads had cut half an inch into his skin, almost dismembering him. On the other hand, Bai Yunfeng was also somewhat embarrassed at this moment. His shoulder was burning hot, as if it had been branded with iron, and there was even a burnt smell. Desperately urging his yuan qi, he was finally able to resolve the remaining power of his opponent's attack. Hiss! The group of immortal ascension boundary masters all sucked in a cold breath, looking towards Yang Kai in horror. A separation and reunion boundary cultivator fighting against a yuan qi cultivator. Although he was at a disadvantage, he was still able to put up a good fight. Just what was this little brat's background? Moreover, the way his strength had increased was quite strange. Originally, he was only at the separation and reunion boundary first stage, but now he had suddenly jumped to the peak of the separation and reunion boundary. At the same time as his strength increased, his demeanor and temperament also changed dramatically. If he was just an ordinary boy before, now he was clearly showing signs of becoming the demon race. Most importantly, his yuan qi had actually dissolved by Yunfeng's yuan qi threads. Didn't this mean that the purity and richness of his yuan qi was not inferior to that of a first-stage yuan qi cultivator? Otherwise, how could he achieve this? Chapter 210. Separation and Reunion Boundary, Yuan Qi Boundary. Although the difference between the two was only one level, there was an essential difference. The former had Yuan Qi, the latter had Yuan Qi. Even 10 separation and reunion boundary cultivators would not necessarily be able to defeat one Yuan Qi boundary first level. The transformation of Yuan Qi into Yuan Qi was a qualitative leap in a cultivator's strength. If someone had told this group of Heaven's Ascension boundary experts before today that a separation and reunion boundary expert could be evenly matched with a Yuan Qi boundary first level, they would have laughed it off. But now this scene was happening right in front of their eyes, no one could question it. But this should be the end of it. The group of Heaven's Ascension boundary experts had sharp eyes. Naturally they could see that Yang Kai had already used all his strength, but Bai Yunfeng was still holding back. There was still a gap between the two. In the field, Bai Yunfeng's expression was ferocious, sneering. "Little brat, you really have the capital to be arrogant. This young master likes young talents like you. I will give you one last chance. Pledge allegiance to my Bai family, recognize me as master, and all the previous unpleasantness. This young master will let bygones be bygones." Yang Kai calmly said, "Not interested." Refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, little brat, you can't blame others for your own mistakes. Bai Yunfeng had also lost his patience. He was a Yuan Qi boundary expert. He wanted to easily take down Yang Kai and force him to reveal the cultivation method of that martial skill, but he did not want to fight with him so anxiously, becoming a joke to others. Now that things had come to this, he did not want to delay any longer. His Yuan Qi surged, a layer of milky white light gushing out of his body, once again flying towards Yang Kai. His speed was astonishing. No one could see any trace of him. While flying, Heaven's net attacked again, countless threads of Yuan Qi forming a large net, enveloping Yang Kai. The gap between the two was too big, and Bai Yunfeng's movement technique was also quite outstanding. Yang Kai's self-created movement technique would not be able to gain any advantage in this battle. He understood that under such circumstances, dodging was definitely not the best choice. He could only fight head-on. With one hand like a knife, he crazily squeezed out the energy in his body. The Yuan Qi was rolling and surging. His palm blade slashed towards the opponent's heavenly net. The Yuan Qi threads were broken one by one. They were broken before they could even get close to the Yang Kai. Tonluo seal. Bai Yunfeng did not mind at all. A faint and arrogant smile appeared at the corner of his mouth as he pushed with both hands. A huge palm print covered Yang Kai's chest. Yang Kai didn't even have time to change his moves before he was hit in the chest. He was sent flying through the air. While in midair, he spat out a mouthful of blood and staggered to the ground, his face pale. But the onlookers couldn't help but let out a cry of surprise. They looked at Yang Kai in surprise. They didn't expect him to be so determined. The Bai family's Heaven's Net seal was a heaven-grade martial technique. Its attack power was enormous. This young man's figure seemed thin, but after taking such a blow, he still had the strength to fight. How could this not be shocking? Bai Yunfeng didn't give Yang Kai any chance to breathe. His figure flashed like the wind and pounced forward. Yang Kai struggled to resist, but was hit by another Heaven's Net seal and was sent flying several dozen meters. Unexpectedly, Bai Yunfeng also cried out in alarm and hurriedly retreated. A violent explosion sounded from his chest, and a stream of red blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The milky white Yuan Qi around his body became illusory and almost collapsed. Bai Yunfeng's face suddenly became ferocious. He gloomily said, "Little brat. Today you will die." What mysterious grade martial technique? It didn't matter. Bai Yunfeng had suffered a loss in front of so many people. Murderous intent surged in his heart. He only wanted to kill Yang Kai to vent his anger. "Brother Bai, don't kill him." Dong Qinghan frowned and shouted, "After all, this is someone else's territory." Heh. Bai Yunfeng sneered, completely ignoring Dong Qinghan. Opening his hand, an unstable mass of murderous aura suddenly appeared. Bai Yunfeng madly poured his yuan qi into his hand, causing it to become more and more turbulent. Heaven's Net Seal. Dong Qinghan couldn't help paling. He hadn't expected Bai Yunfeng to have even mastered the Bai family's Heaven's Net Seal. Compared to the Heaven's Net Seal just now, the power of this Heaven's Net Seal was incomparable. It was definitely one of the Bai family's secret techniques. Just as he was about to warn Yang Kai to be careful, he saw a burst of starlight appear and a violent aura burst out from Yang Kai's body. His right hand trembled as if there was an uncontrollable power erupting from somewhere. A blurred and dazzling starry sky suddenly appeared under the clear blue sky. The star. Everyone's eyes flashed as they stared at Yang Kai, feeling the power of the martial skill in his hand, all of them paling. They had long heard that Yang Kai had used a mysterious martial skill to severely injure the sixth-order monster beast inside the Heaven's Cave inheritance. Now that they saw this scene, how could they not understand that this little brat was about to use it again? "Young lord, be careful." The two immortal ascension boundary cultivators from the Bai family exclaimed, fearing that Bai Yunfeng would suffer a loss in this confrontation, so they quickly rushed towards Yang Kai, wanting to finish him off first. However, just as they started to move, two large hands were placed on their shoulders, one on the left and one on the right. The two immortal ascension boundary masters immediately froze in place, unable to circulate their yuan qi. It was as if a towering mountain was pressing down on their shoulders, making it impossible for them to even move a finger. The two immortal ascension boundary masters' faces were pale, cold sweat dripping from their foreheads. They were so frightened that their souls almost flew out of their bodies. Although these two were only immortal ascension boundary fourth or fifth boundary masters, they were still masters of their generation. Now, they had been silently restrained by someone else. It was obvious how strong this person was. How could a small place like High Heaven Pavilion have such a terrifying character? Juniors are just playing around, us old men should just watch from the sidelines, there's no need for us to intervene. A faint voice came from the side. At this moment, the two immortal ascension boundary masters found that they could move again. Turning their heads in amazement, they saw an old man standing next to them, his face full of wrinkles, looking at them with a smile. This person, they knew. It was the shopkeeper from High Heaven Pavilion's contribution hall. Although when they first arrived at High Heaven Pavilion they had noticed that this shopkeeper was somewhat strange, neither of them had expected him to be so strong. "What do you two think?" Meng Wuya asked with a smile. "Your Excellency's words are reasonable." How could the two Bai family masters dare to refute? The other party's strength was so great that he could take their lives with a snap of his fingers. If they refuted, they would die. This sensational scene fell into the eyes of the Dong family and Purple Fern Valley's immortal ascension boundary masters. These four masters also didn't notice when Meng Wuya had arrived or when he had appeared next to the Bai family masters. Everything had happened so suddenly. The Dong family's wind and cloud dual guards were shocked, but they didn't change their expressions. They knew that their young lord and Yang Kai were cousins, so naturally they had nothing to fear. On the other hand, the two immortal ascension boundary masters from Purple Fern Valley stared at Meng Wuya with vigilance, thinking of all the famous masters in the world, but they couldn't match up with Meng Wuya. This battle is somewhat interesting. Just as the two Purple Fern Valley masters were puzzled, a strange voice suddenly called out from behind them. The two immortal ascension boundary masters' expression changed greatly. Turning their heads to look, they saw that an old man had appeared next to them at some point. This old man had the demeanor of a transcendent being. His beard was very long, and he was wearing an extremely simple robe. He stood silently in the middle of them. Another master. Although he was just standing there, stroking his beard with a kind smile on his face, watching the two juniors madly gather their yuan qi, the two Purple Fern Valley masters could still feel that this old man's aura was locked onto them. Once they made the slightest move, they were afraid they would be ruthlessly attacked. High Heaven Pavilion. Where did such terrifying masters pop up one after another? With these two masters, it could be said that High Heaven Pavilion's strength was not inferior to an ordinary first-class force. The two Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters from Purple Fern Valley and the two Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters from the Bai family stared at each other, all of them seeing the shock and helplessness in each other's eyes. There was a kind of sadness of holding hands and looking at each other with tearful eyes. Asterisk schwa schwa schwa. Asterisk another 5 figures descended. This time the 5 elders of High Heaven Pavilion had arrived. These 5 people had been alarmed by the fight here and wanted to investigate, but when they saw the old man with the goatee, their faces lit up and they quickly bowed. Greetings, Sect Master. This old man was actually the mysterious Sect Master of High Heaven Pavilion. When the 3 great forces had come to visit High Heaven Pavilion as guests, the Sect Master of High Heaven Pavilion had yet to show his face. For this reason, these masters and several of the young lords had silently criticized the Sect Master of High Heaven Pavilion. Now that they had realized how terrifying the Sect Master was, how could they dare complain? With such strength, there was no need to put the 3 great forces' young lords in their eyes, unless the elders of these forces arrived. Fan Hong was even more so, quickly running over to pay his respects. Purple Fern Valley disciple Fan Hong greets Senior. The Sect Master smiled and nodded, but didn't say anything, just turning his eyes to the field. During this period of delay, whether it was Yang Kai's star mark or by Yunfeng's Heaven's Gathering star, both of them had condensed their qi to its peak. The 2 martial skills were somewhat similar, both were extremely lethal, but they needed time to increase their momentum. In just a few breaths of time, their momentum had reached its peak. Yang Kai! Bai Yunfeng roared, his eyes angrily staring towards Yang Kai. Come! Yang Kai didn't show any fear, the back of his hand flashing with stars, his figure flickered, creating a star field around him. The 2 majestic energies quickly approached each other and then collided. This kind of peak martial skill collision, even the Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters were shocked. Like a blazing sun exploding, the light was so dazzling that no one could open their eyes, but under the divine senses of these Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters, they could clearly feel that whether it was Yang Kai or Bai Yunfeng, the yuan qi in their bodies had suddenly become chaotic, their auras stagnating, and a violent sound rang out as the 2 were sent flying in different directions. When the light dissipated, the sound of the 2 men's heavy breathing could be heard. A deep pit more than a dozen meters wide had appeared in the ground. Separated by about 300 meters, Yang Kai and Bai Yunfeng both stood up shakily. Chapter 211. This time's collision had actually ended in a draw. However, looking around, it was obvious that Yang Kai's injuries were more serious than Bai Yunfeng's. Even so, it was still shocking to see. A peak separation and reunion boundary cultivator was able to fight so fiercely with a yuan qi first-order cultivator, and in a direct confrontation of martial skills. Didn't this mean that the martial skill he possessed was even stronger than the Bai family's secret skill, Heaven's Gathering Star? It really was a mysterious grade martial skill. The 2 young men, both covered in blood, stared at each other. Bai Yunfeng's eyes were filled with madness and disbelief. He had never expected that Yang Kai would still be able to stand up. Not only did he not show the slightest sign of weakness, he was actually fighting more valiantly. I said, "Today you will definitely die. Even if the Heavenly Emperor comes, he won't be able to save you." Bai Yunfeng roared ferociously. Although he and Yang Kai had no previous grievances, today's battle had repeatedly exceeded his expectations. As a young lord of the Bai family, Bai Yunfeng was simply unwilling to accept this fact. With so many people watching, if he couldn't defeat Yang Kai, wouldn't his previous words be the same as slapping his own face? With a roar, Bai Yunfeng waved his hand, and a scroll appeared in his hand. The scroll unfurled, and on it were countless pictures of rare demonic beasts. The Bai family's Earth-grade mid-rank artifact, 100 Beast Diagram. Dong Qinghan's expression changed as he exclaimed. Although it seemed like he had inadvertently shouted out, in fact, he was trying to wake Yang Kai up. Bai Yunfeng sneered again and again as he continued to pour Yuan Qi into his artifact. With the influx of Yuan Qi, the monster beast patterns in the 100 Beast Diagram began to faintly move, and immediately, a burst of light rushed out from the diagram, transforming into a variety of monster beasts, all of them ferociously rushing towards Yang Kai. In order to kill Yang Kai, Bai Yunfeng had exhausted all of his means. This artifact was his biggest trump card, and also his final attack. He didn't believe that an unknown disciple of High Heaven Pavilion could survive the onslaught of hundreds of beasts. More and more dazzling lights appeared in the air, and all kinds of strange monster beasts materialized. They were like thousands of galloping horses, enough to crush all the enemies in front of them. Yang Kai roared, his eyes overflowing with killing intent. A crimson sword suddenly appeared in his hand. Shura sword, the Azura's Gate's most precious treasure. With the Shura sword in hand, Yang Kai's already ruthless Yuan Qi became even more violent at this moment, reaching a terrifying level. Everyone's eyes were trembling as they stared fixedly at the crimson sword. All of them were able to sense dense and material killing intent from this sword, and when they looked at this sword, it was as if they'd seen a blood-red world. At that place, blood flowed into rivers, corpses were piled up into mountains, and a bloody aura that caused one to be terrified suffused the air. The two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters from Purple Fern Valley and the Wind and Cloud Dual Guards quickly protected their young lords and retreated, fearing that they would be affected by this terrifying murderous intent. Meng Wuya's expression changed slightly. The same was true for High Heaven Pavilion's sect master. The two of them had never thought that Yang Kai would actually be able to bring out such a powerful weapon. This was completely beyond their expectations. As the hundreds of beasts rushed forward, Yang Kai raised his sword and swept it across. As the sword swept through, the monster beast let out a mournful cry before completely dissipating. Yang Kai rushed forward, his eyes filled with a bloodthirsty madness, but Bai Yunfeng, who was still calm, finally showed a change in expression. He had never expected that even after using his most powerful artifact, he would still be unable to defeat his opponent. The monster beast that rushed out of the 100 Beast Diagram couldn't stop him at all. One monster beast after another was cut down. The distance between Yang Kai and Bai Yunfeng quickly narrowed. Affected by the violent bloody aura and endless murderous intent, Bai Yunfeng was almost unable to move. He could only mechanically urge his Yuan Qi, pouring it into the 100 Beast Diagram in an attempt to block Yang Kai. This kind of action was meaningless, only accelerating the consumption of his Yuan Qi. A moment later, Yang Kai arrived in front of Bai Yunfeng, his cold eyes faintly sweeping over him. Then he raised the Azura sword in his hand and fiercely chopped down. Everyone's heart jumped, because they could see that Yang Kai's sword was not aimed at Bai Yunfeng, but at the 100 Beast Diagram. He actually wanted to destroy this Earth-grade mid-rank artifact. The blood-red sword light was like a rainbow piercing through the sun, ruthlessly cutting through the 100 Beast Diagram. The few demonic beasts that were still flying in the air disappeared in an instant. A ring of dense light appeared on the 100 Beast Diagram, and a gap was created when the sword edge swept across it. Everyone's eyes widened in disbelief. The 100 Beast Diagram was an Earth-grade mid-rank artifact. Although it was not a defensive artifact, how could it be so fragile? A sword cut through the diagram, and a big gap appeared. How sharp was this sword? What kind of artifact was it? Shua! The Azura sword was swung backwards, and the gap was widened a lot. Another sword light flashed, accompanied by a tearing sound, and the Earth-grade mid-rank 100 Beast Diagram was cut in half, falling to the ground. 3 swords. Destroying an Earth-grade mid-rank artifact. No one dared to believe such a result. Yang Kai's sword turned, shaking out a sword flower, and stabbed towards Bai Yunfeng, who was standing there stupidly as if he had lost his soul. "Please show mercy." The two by-family immortal ascension boundary masters could not stand it anymore. Just now they were restrained by Meng Wuya, so they did not dare to make the slightest move, but now seeing Yang Kai actually want to take Bai Yunfeng's life, they did not hesitate and quickly shouted. While shouting, they quickly rushed over. Meng Wuya did not stop them. Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters were really different. The two of them almost instantly arrived in front of Yang Kai, one of them flicking his finger towards the Azura sword while the other grabbed Bai Yunfeng and quickly retreated. With a ding sound, the Azura sword's trajectory deviated, and Bai Yunfeng's life was saved. Yang Kai coldly swept his eyes over the two by-family Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters, but did not pursue. With these two guarding him, he could not kill Bai Yunfeng. Young Master, please show mercy. My young lord's skill is inferior and has already been defeated. The Immortal Ascension Boundary Master who blocked the Azura sword frowned and anxiously said. Although his tone was somewhat dissatisfied, there was absolutely no disrespect. Yang Kai stared at him for a moment, hesitating for a long time before finally putting away the Azura sword. A great battle had come to an end. This battle was not on the same level, but the final result was that the one with the lower strength had won, which made everyone somewhat confused. You have all come to High Heaven Pavilion as guests. This old master welcomes you, but High Heaven Pavilion is not a place where you can behave atrociously. The sect master's expression was like an ancient well, and although his tone was flat, anyone could hear the anger in his voice. Once these words reached the ears of the many masters, they all became flustered. The Bai family did not have the face to remain here, one of them holding Bai Yunfeng while the other picked up the 100-beast diagram fragment that had fallen to the ground, cupping his fists and saying, "These days we have disturbed you. We hope High Heaven Pavilion will forgive us. The Bai family will definitely come to apologize." Finished speaking, the two Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters quickly left with Bai Yunfeng. The people from Purple Fern Valley did not dare to stay any longer. Originally, they had looked down on this small sect. After arriving here, they had put on a superior appearance to recruit talents, but today, two terrifying masters had appeared one after another, and a separation and reunion boundary first stage disciple from High Heaven Pavilion had almost killed the Bai family young lord, causing the people from Purple Fern Valley to tremble in fear. High Heaven Pavilion could not be underestimated. With such a powerful master in charge, any random disciple was a madman, a group of terrifying existences pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Fan Hong and the two Immortal Ascension Masters also repeatedly apologized and quickly left. Dong Qinghan and the Wind and Cloud Dual Guards also did the same. Before leaving, Dong Qinghan glanced over at Yang Kai. The shock in his eyes had not yet faded. Outside the field, many High Heaven Pavilion disciples had gathered. This battle was too earth-shattering. Not only had it attracted the attention of the 5 great elders, many of the disciples who had heard the commotion had also come to watch. Su Xianwu coldly glanced over at the group of disciples and loudly said, "Disciples who have been in contact with the 3 great forces these days, leave on your own. My High Heaven Pavilion is just a small sect, not a place for you to stay so as not to ruin your future." Hearing this sentence, many people's expressions darkened, feeling extremely annoyed. They were all disciples who had been recruited by the 3 great forces. They had thought that by joining one of the 3 great forces, they would have a better life, but they had not expected that their own sect would also be so prestigious. After the sect master and treasurer Meng appeared, these Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters were as obedient as rabbits. At this moment, these disciples' hearts were filled with regret. But since the second elder had already said so, how could they still shamelessly stay? In the field, Yang Kai restrained his aura and stared at the High Heaven Pavilion's sect master faintly, his eyes filled with some doubt, but also some relief. Meng Wuya grinned meaningfully before his figure flickered and disappeared. "Everyone disperse." The sect master waved his hand, then turned to Yang Kai, his face showing a kind expression as he said, "Come with me." The 5 great elders all looked surprised. They had not expected that this battle would allow Yang Kai to enter the sect master's eyes. Now that he had been summoned, naturally there would be benefits for him. Yang Kai nodded. There were many questions and doubts in his heart that needed to be answered. Covered in blood, following the sect master step by step, the High Heaven Pavilion disciples all stared at Xianxia, all of their previous contempt and discrimination replaced with shock and panic. After passing through many buildings, the group arrived at a secluded area. This was the sect master's retreat. Normally, even the 5 great elders were not allowed to set foot here. There was a courtyard and several thatched cottages, simple and crude, but there were many flowers and plants in the courtyard, all of which were very common outside. The sect master's retreat did not have the slightest luxurious things, only ordinary and elegant. Leading Xianxia into one of the cottages, the sect master only gave him a set of clothes and a bottle of pills. "Heal your wounds first, then change your clothes and come find me," the sect master said, then floated away. Although there were many questions, Xianxia was not in a hurry to ask, instead entering the cottage, taking out a pill and swallowing it. Today's battle could be described as extremely difficult. Yuan-Chi realm masters were not easy to deal with, and during the confrontation, Xianxia suffered losses. If not for the star mark, he may have been defeated. The Bai family's Heaven's Gathering Dipper was extraordinary, not much worse than the star mark. Today's battle could be said to have been led by Xianxia himself. Although there was a hint of jealousy, it was not the main reason. Xianxia just wanted to confirm many of his speculations at this critical moment. Why did the 4th Master Yang want him to come to High Heaven Pavilion? What kind of relationship did he have with this place? Was this the place where he used to train? There were many profound meanings, but Xianxia could not guess them all. Since he couldn't guess them, then he would draw a big lottery. If he couldn't clean up after himself, there would always be someone to clean up after him. And this person who would clean up after him was the key figure. But Xianxia didn't expect that the person he would draw out would actually be the High Heaven Pavilion sect master. Chapter 212. A day later, Xianxia dressed neatly and walked out of the hut. Inside the courtyard, the sect master stood under a plum blossom tree, one hand behind his back, the other stroking his beard, motionless, his eyes staring into the distance. Xianxia walked behind him and didn't say anything to disturb him. Simply standing there and following his gaze, he saw several flower buds on a branch, slowly blooming in the cold wind. One old and one young man stood there for a full day and night, waiting for these flower buds to fully bloom before the sect master turned around and asked, "How is your injury?" "It's no big deal," Xianxia grinned. "Should I call you sect master or 11th elder?" The person in front of him was not only High Heaven Pavilion's sect master, Ling Tai Su, but also the 11th elder he had met at the Coiling Dragon Stream. At that time, Xianxia didn't know much about High Heaven Pavilion, so although he had some doubts, he didn't think too much about it. Later, when he heard Sassafras talk about High Heaven Pavilion, he was able to confirm the 11th elder's true identity. High Heaven Pavilion didn't have an 11th elder, but the current Ling Tai Su was the 11th sect master. He was a man of great talent and vision, but because of his 2 disciples, he had fallen into decline for more than 10 years. If it weren't for the 2 disciples he had accepted more than 10 years ago, Ling Tai Su would certainly have more strength than he had now. If the knot in his heart couldn't be untied, he wouldn't be able to break through the shackles of the immortal ascension boundary and reach the next level. Ling Tai Su smiled, "As you wish." Xianxia opened his mouth, but Ling Tai Su interrupted him, "I know you have a lot of questions. Please enlighten me, sect master." Xianxia asked in a deep voice. He had already guessed what he wanted to ask, so there was no need to ask. Ling Tai Su's eyes were deep, a touch of reminiscence appearing on his face. After a moment, he slowly opened his mouth and said in a low voice, "This old master has only accepted 2 disciples in his life. The eldest was simple and kind, while the second was shrewd and intelligent. If nothing unexpected happened, both of them would have been pillars of High Heaven Pavilion, leading our sect to glory. But the world is unpredictable, and the second was too competitive. He was actually willing to fall into the evil path and even tried to kill Boss. This is something that cannot be tolerated by common sense." Xianxia listened quietly. He had heard this story from Sassafras before. However, the sect leader was the person involved in this matter. Now that he was talking about it, there was definitely an unusual meaning behind it. According to the rumors outside, eldest brother was killed and second brother was sealed in the coiling dragon stream, is that right? Yang Kai nodded. Ling Tai Su chuckled. This rumor is only half true. Second brother is indeed sealed in the coiling dragon stream, but eldest brother is not dead. Ling Tai Su proudly declared, this old master's eldest disciple is called Yang Yingfeng. Yang Kai couldn't help but be moved, his face filled with shock. After a long time, he let out a soft sigh. At this point, the doubts that had troubled him for many years had disappeared. Yang Yingfeng, the name of the Yang family's fourth master Yang, which was also the name of Yang Kai's father. Unexpectedly, the fourth master Yang really was a disciple of High Heaven Pavilion. What's more, he was Ling Tai Su's eldest disciple, the unlucky eldest brother who was rumored to have been killed by the second junior brother. No wonder his father had been plagued with a chronic illness all these years, making it difficult for him to improve his strength. Presumably, it was because he had been injured by the second junior brother who had fallen into the evil path. No wonder he had asked him to come to High Heaven Pavilion. It turned out there was such a relationship between them. According to seniority, you should call me Grand Master. Ling Tai Su smiled slightly. Disciple greets Grand Master. Yang Kai somewhat unwillingly bowed. Ling Tai Su saw Yang Kai's expression but didn't become angry. He just chuckled and said, you blame me for turning a blind eye to your identity and making you suffer, isn't that right? A little. Yang Kai replied in a muffled voice. During his first 3 years in High Heaven Pavilion, he had suffered a lot. The fickleness of the world. But he didn't care too much about his own suffering. It was because he didn't have the ability. How could he blame it on others? Others weren't born to be his nanny, why should they take care of him? Don't blame this old master. If you want to blame someone, blame the Yang family's fourth master Yang. This old master hasn't completely vented his anger. Ling Tai Su snorted softly. Hearing this sentence, Yang Kai couldn't help shrinking his neck. He wasn't a fool, how could he not understand the meaning of Ling Tai Su's words? The Yang family's disciples were like cuckoo eggs, they couldn't be raised properly. When the fourth master Yang came here, he must have been loved by Ling Tai Su, but he never thought that after 10 years of painstaking effort and hard work, he would only end up benefiting someone else. If his second brother hadn't fallen into the demonic path, Ling Tai Su would still have some hope, but his honest and loyal eldest brother was the Yang family's ingrate and his second brother had also fallen into the demonic path. In the end, Ling Tai Su's efforts were all for naught and he was unable to break through his bottleneck. In other words, the fourth master Yang had to bear a large part of the responsibility for Ling Tai Su's knot. As the saying goes, the son must repay the father's debts. The fourth master Yang owed Ling Tai Su, so how could Yang Kai stay out of it? Thinking about this, Yang Kai quickly smiled and said, Grand Master, please calm down. The fourth master Yang isn't a good person, you don't need to lower yourself to his level. Ling Tai Su originally had a straight face, but seeing Yang Kai's expression change so quickly, he couldn't help but laugh. Eldest brother is such a dull person, how did he raise such a slippery little brat like you? A real man knows when to yield and when not to yield. Yang Kai saw his expression and knew that he was just joking and wasn't really angry. Ling Tai Su took a deep breath and slowly said, Eldest brother is not a person who lies. In fact, 3 years after he entered the pavilion he had already told this old master his identity, so this old master was already mentally prepared for his departure from High Heaven Pavilion. You don't need to worry too much about it. Yang Kai nodded slightly and flattered, Grand Master is magnanimous. When I return to the Yang family, I will teach him a lesson for you. Ling Tai Su's mouth twitched as if he wanted to laugh, but he held back. The day you arrived at High Heaven Pavilion, this old master received a letter from your father. The reason why I didn't bother with you was because of your father's own intentions. In the letter, he said that you weren't suitable for cultivation and only hoped that you could safely spend 10 years in High Heaven Pavilion until the Yang family called you back. Ling Tai Su explained. Do you know why you aren't suitable for cultivation? Ling Tai Su asked. Father said that I was born with a deficiency. Yang Kai frowned. Because eldest brother was seriously injured and has not been able to recover for many years, leading to your birth with a congenital deficiency. Ling Tai Su nodded, immediately turning his eyes towards Yang Kai. A congenital deficiency is almost impossible to cure, but now you can cultivate again, and with your outstanding talent, your strength is improving rapidly. This old master doesn't care what kind of mysteries lie behind this, but in the future, unless your parents ask, you must not reveal anything about this matter to anyone else. Yang Kai nodded again and again. Although this was the first time he had spoken so openly with this Grand Master, Yang Kai could feel his care and concern. In fact, if you were just an ordinary person, this old master really wouldn't care about you. You are the happiest person alive. Even if you suffer and are bullied, you are still alive. But since you have both talent and strength, this old master can't ignore you. The reason you made such a ruckus yesterday was to draw this old master out, right? Yang Kai smiled. I didn't think it would be you, I just thought it would be one of the 5 great elders who had a relationship with my father. Ling Tai Su chuckled. It's no wonder you didn't think of it. Your father sent you here, first to ensure your safety, and second to let you resolve the knot in my heart. Eldest brother is too simple, thinking that this old master's knot is because of him. In fact, this old master has never blamed him. When Yang Kai heard this, he could only sigh, not knowing how to comfort him. Good, your doubts have been answered, right? Ling Tai Su smiled at Yang Kai. Yang Kai said somewhat embarrassedly. These days, he had been thinking about many things, but there were many things he couldn't understand. Today, after talking with his Grand Master, he had finally been enlightened. Now it's this old master's turn. Ling Tai Su said seriously. Grand Master, what do you want to ask? Yang Kai looked at him suspiciously. Your aura. Ling Tai Su's face was very serious. In the battle 2 days ago, I noticed your aura was bloody and violent, not at all inferior to my second brother's. This old master only wants to ask you one thing. Are you cultivating some kind of evil secret art? Yang Kai shook his head decisively. He also knew that the unyielding will was strange and quickly displayed this mysterious martial skill. His Yuan Qi surged, and Yang Kai's strength directly jumped from the separation and reunion boundary first stage to the peak separation and reunion boundary, his body filled with evil Qi. Murderous intense sword, as if there was no one else around, as if he was the only one in this world. Ling Tai Su's pair of deep eyes stared into Yang Kai's eyes, as if he could see into the depths of Yang Kai's soul. Take out your sword, Ling Tai Su shouted. A crimson sword instantly appeared in Yang Kai's hand, and with the Azura sword in hand, his murderous intent became even more substantial. This Azura sect artifact and Yang Kai's Yuan Qi seemed to have some kind of affinity, resonating with each other. With the sword in hand and without it, Yang Kai was like a completely different person. Ling Tai Su stared at Yang Kai for a moment, carefully observing the changes in his body and the fluctuations in his mood, his expression gradually becoming relaxed, then immediately becoming shocked, his expression changing in an unpredictable manner. After a long time, Ling Tai Su nodded slightly. Yang Kai put away the Azura sword and dispersed the unyielding will, returning to his normal state. It seems to have become the demon race, but in fact, it's not. Ling Tai Su frowned slightly. Is your soul awake? Strange, such a violent and bloody aura. Even if this old master were to endure it for a long time, it would inevitably trigger a heart demon and disturb his mind. How can you not be affected? After a moment of contemplation, Ling Tai Su's eyes lit up. Yes, you cultivate a yang attribute secret art. Extreme yang. It is the nemesis of the evil Yin aura. With the yang attribute Yuan Qi protecting you, you can avoid falling into depravity. After saying this, Ling Tai Su was stunned. How could these two contradictory things be perfectly combined in one person? After pondering for a long time, he still couldn't figure it out. Although Ling Tai Su knew that Yang Kai must have some secret that allowed these two auras to combine, he didn't ask. Raising his eyes, Ling Tai Su said, You caused a ruckus 2 days ago, and even revealed the news of a profound grade martial skill. I'm afraid there will be a lot of trouble in the future. I'll go out and lie low for a while. Yong Kai already had a plan. Ling Tai Su smiled. Where can you hide? For the time being, don't run around, just stay in the sect. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.